for this project, the more simple you can do this project, the better off it is. I suggest just inlining the whole CSS file. Honestly, like if you're having trouble like trying to figure out which CSS is critical, which CSS is not critical, the thing is like for us to know what Google is actually looking for, we either need to use some sort of package like a grunt package or a Bower package that people have programmed, and they've done the research already to figure out which elements of this HTML are critical for rendering above the fold content, instead of you just having to actually just guess and pick what type of elements and calls are critical. Right. So I really just recommend inline your entire CSS, minify it, and you should be fine to help you deal with the render blocking content. And again, using JavaScript to load CSS, make sure that you're following the right instructions. If you have like more questions about how to implement the JavaScript to load the CSS, post your code on Piazza so all of us could actually look at the code and see how you're doing that in JavaScript. There could be some sort of implementation issue that you may be having that prevents you from successfully loading the JavaScript after everything's been loaded. Again, another tip is to actually put the CSS at the bottom of the page rather than at the top, because then that will actually help you go ahead and that will get rid of the render blocking content. Because remember, in your class, the browser downloads the HTML code. It then goes and it does a GET request to actually get the CSS and the JavaScript file in your header tag. So, and then it waits for all the CSS and the JavaScript to load and do their magic. Why don't you just put everything at the bottom of the HTML page? That actually will help with render blocking as well. Inlining is basically now we're in the mindset of, okay, how can I create production code? We're not in development code anymore, like in Project 1 and Project 2, because where we force you to follow a very strict style, make sure the code is very neat, nice, and organized. But this time, often in the real world, developers will have development code, which is nice and pretty, and then production code, which is very, very ugly. So basically, inlining gets rid of all the extra spaces, blank spaces, new line characters, anything that doesn't pertain to the actual code itself. So basically, I have this whole page of code. I inline it and I minify it. I actually get rid of all the spaces and extra characters into one single long line, and you cannot read it. And then you're inlining it. You're actually putting the CSS in that code inside the HTML site, because again, our goal is to create production code, so mobile devices that have that doesn't have that high of internet speed could effectively download your site as fast as possible, and then they could use your site as fast as possible. We're going for like 1 second loading time. That's the ideal. Or else if it takes 2 to 3 seconds to load, you start getting impatient. Yeah. And we would not want to do that for our users.
Absolutely. And essentially, by removing those extra spaces and new line characters, we are reducing the size of the file.
Yeah. So you're reducing the critical sizes of your file as well. That's actually as critical as well.
So we don't want anything that's not useful. We don't want browser to download anything that's not useful.
Exactly.
That's not relevant.
Yeah.
And just whatever we need, minimum amount of downloading.
Yeah.
That improves the speed a lot.
Yeah, that improves the speed of your websites a lot.